Alright, a big white man has posted a video on the internet stating his opinions on the time rules. He has specifically, explicitly said in this video that the time rules are great and then that he likes them. He really especially enjoys it when people comment talking about how much they like the time rules and how much they agree with him. For legal reasons, that's a joke. He did not say that. In fact, he's very upset at people saying that.
Hey everybody, Joseph Rothschild here, aka MBT.
He is so bright. Oh my god, dude. Imagine having the reflection of the sun itself from your skin. Oh shit.
And today, I'm sorry to tell you, I'm gonna ask you to do something that I know you hate. I'm gonna ask you to think. Yes, Farfa, even you. I want to begin.
What? Oh, I'm 18 seconds into the video and I'm taking fucking strays. What?
Today's video by asking you a question. How many times has this happened to you? You're playing on a simulator like...
I'm gonna skip like 10 seconds.
Bring it up. After 3 days of testing, you've gone 24-2 on this strategy. Feeling untouchable.
Master he's talking about.
You walk into a regional to collect your invite, and you just barely miss it. You win 5-3, but you have a good excuse.
Pass down invites aren't a thing anymore in any region, I believe, right? NA has never had pass down invites, I think, and I'm pretty sure EU doesn't even have them anymore, right?
You lost around to Dimension Shifter, you lost around to a misplay, but the critical
Haha, mistake, get it?
go round.
Great edit, Dyer. Common Dyer W.
You lost to time. And really, how are you supposed to prepare for that? You're not even playing a particularly complicated deck. Sometimes games just last a long time. You found yourself lower in life points than your opponent, and you walked out of the regional empty-handed. Oh, those darn time rules, you think. If only we went back to 0, 1, 2, 3, I would have had that in the bag. Well, my dimensionally deficient friend, you have what I...
Dimensionally deficient? Hey guys, I'm stupid on multiple planes of existence, not just 3D.
I'd call a case of the 3Ds. It's time for you...
I swear to God I didn't pre-watch this. Oh my, dude, this is not beating the allegations. YouTubers literally just share one fucking brain cell. That is insane. Clown to clown communication. We have one pea in our skull rattling around shared between us depending on who's live. That's wild.
For you to ascend to the 4th dimension, to stop thinking about time as a weird apology for the complexity of Yu-Gi-Oh, to stop thinking about it as this horrorscape you enter when playing against someone playing as slow as they possibly could, and start thinking about...
So admittedly, this is like one of those do you condemn Hamas situations, where it's been 1 minute 30 seconds into the video and Joseph has refused to condemn the time rules, which is why he's getting a lot of pushback, I think, because he did specifically in a group chat. He was like mad about people's comments on this not understanding the point of the video. But the thing is, it's been 1 minute 30 seconds and he hasn't condemned the time rules, so that's why people think he's supporting the time rules. But there was a disclaimer at the start of the video that said you should think. Crazy comparison? No, it's not though, because it's the same thing. It's like you can't have a conversation without someone. Okay, but do you condemn? Okay, but do you? Very apt, but what? It fits. Don't tell me it doesn't fit.
Time as an integral part of the game that you need to prepare for and account for in everything from deck selection to deck building to testing. It's part of the game. It's
these Dyer edits. FA test run. Dyer, did you just go into the Yu-Gi-Oh database, type in the word test, and take the first card?
Important that you wield it to your advantage. We're going to begin with how to build for it. A significant amount of...
Yeah, so, it's basically a guide on how to play around the time rules and stuff like that. Ooh, this is juicy. I'm gonna make sure that we do everything in our power to get this boy banned. Do you know how many YouTubers have said something on social media that have resulted in them getting banned for saying something that is illegal and technically cheating? Ooh, he's going to advise us to cheat. He's not actually. It's really funny. He put a disclaimer specifically, again, do not break policy guidelines.
Brazil!
JVX, thank you for the Twitch Prime.
People's testing discounts time entirely. If you're playing with testing partners in a scenario where you want to allow people to rewind board states, it doesn't really make sense to have a running...
I wonder how many people actually test with time. I think from all of the people that I've spoken to at the high level, they actually don't really test for time. TLDR, the biggest skill, essentially, quote-unquote skill, is just learning when to scoop early enough. Because a lot of people will try and play out an unwinnable game and then lose in game 3 and be like, damn, if I would have won next turn. It's like, well, yeah, but, you know, you sat and tried to fight through Labyrinth with 5 set cards, resetting D-Barrier every turn, for like 3 extra turns than you needed to in game 2, right? So it's like, why did you do that? The game was over. Just scoop, go to game 3, win in game 3, right? Like, that's a skill most people just don't get.
Clock going. If you're playing on a simulator, none of them do an adequate
Stop saying that!
job of representing a 45-minute round time, and as a result, during a testing process that results in a deck build, a lot of people just aren't considering it. But you gotta. When you're building a deck, just expect that some number of your games are going to go into time, and start developing plans for them. Sometimes that's just going to be changing up combo math a little bit in order to do an arbitrary amount of damage. Think about activating Lacrima in such a way that it's chain blocked in Snake Eyes. Free ban list, of course. Sometimes it'll be including a card in your sideboard that your combo line can theoretically weave into in a scenario where you're boarding as the clock is winding down to 0. Think
every single tier player, I think for the last 2 years, 3 years maybe, has a volcanic scatter shot in their extra deck. Every single one for the last, like, since Power of the Elements has just had a volcanic scatter shot in their extra deck.
Minor speaking mistake, I win.
Clearly, I meant side deck. Extra deck.
Think of how many decks utilized exactly Volcanic Scattershot to send
We're just the same person, honestly. He's a white me.
off Sprite Sprint when those cards were really popular. And sometimes it'll be recognizing that you'll be going...
I said did not pre-watch this. I probably didn't pre-watch. I said didn't pre-watch this.
Second in time...
To be fair, come on, that's like hardly pre-watching, okay? That's like the most infamous example, to be fair.
frequently enough that you should consider playing cards like Spooky Dogwood that are powerful in that scenario. A lot of people build their deck in its entirety and
Funniest interaction I've ever seen of Spooky Dogwood is a lot of people forget Spooky Dogwood's quote-unquote restriction. Absolute funniest interaction I've ever seen. So, discard this, apply this effect, you gain attack points equal to the number of life points your opponent... you gain life points equal to the attack of the monster your opponent special summons. Now, here's a funny thing. If you did not gain life points by this effect, your life is halved. So essentially, if your opponent dogwoods you and you don't summon a monster that gives any attack to your opponent, it doesn't have any attack, it doesn't give your opponent any life, it doesn't gain life, therefore that you half your life points. So I saw this interaction at the last YCS where of course it was like table 700 or something. The guy goes activate Danger Jackalope. His opponent chains Spooky Dogwood. He rolls a dice, and then the dice hits the number corresponding to the Jackalope in the hand. He discards Jackalope from the hand that was hit off of the reveal. The Jackalope discards hits the graveyard, and he says, okay, I choose to not activate Jackalope. So his opponent loses 4,000 life points, he passes turn and loses in time. Insane. Insane.
and then after assembly, try to force in some time cards. But I think that's three-dimensional thinking. Even main deck card inclusions like Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill include a...
Oh, do you know how many people forget the effect of Ghost Mourner? It's not just effect Veiler, guys. It's it's not just effect Veiler.
burn effect. And that
I don't think it triggers off of overlaying. I think it's like the only thing, right?
burn effect should be part of your decision calculus when deciding what your hand trap match
Decision
should look
calculus.
like. It becomes a little alluring to play a card that's only sort of effect Veiler if also it often wins you the game if you're going into a time scenario. This extends far beyond individual tech choices as well. You should be considering this process when deciding what deck to play for an event, period. A deck like Labyrinth Fiendsmith, for instance, may be really well positioned for a particular metagame. You might be taking names on DB, but if you sit down with the assumption that
Stop saying that.
you're going to be losing a majority of your games in time, and that you're probably going to be going to time every single round. No matter how fast you play, you are eventually going to have to rankle with the fact that this is a liability, and pretending like it isn't is uncompetitive. Speaking of competition, let's get to... Okay.
This is such a dangerous slide.
Is uncompetitive. Speaking of competition, let's get to...
This is such a dangerous slide. Be very careful how you word what you say, Mr. Rothschild. Konami's watching.
Okay, here is my Konami mandated disclaimer. I am not advocating for slow play. In no scenario should you take longer than a reasonable amount of time to make individual plays. You should not be sitting on a burn spell, watching the clock roll down, making...
Here comes the but. Here comes the however. Here comes the but. He's gonna say but. He's gonna say but. I'm not racist, but...
arbitrary actions before you finally win the game. And I guarantee you, you're going to lose more games from opponents calling out your slow play than you would be from slow playing. Okay, now that that's out of the way, there are ways, not slow playing of course, that you can change your in-game play and decision-making in such a way that you will win a game in time that you otherwise would lose. And taking those W's is really important. When you sit down and get an understanding of what your opponent's playing, take a couple seconds to think to yourself which of you is favored in time. If you're familiar with the assignment function and who's the beatdown, I'm asking you to perform a similar calculus. Determine which of you
that's a stretch to compare them. Anyway, that's whatever.
wants to go into time and then play accordingly. For an example of what that means, let's say you're playing Snake Eye and your opponent's playing Labyrinth.
Would recommend you watch that, by the way, especially if you play old formats in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's an old Magic the Gathering article called Who is the Beatdown, which, ironically enough, written by a Patrick. Every card game apparently has a notorious Patrick. Basically just teaching you like the concept of like tempo in a really in-depth way, which does not apply to modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Whatsoever in any shape or form anymore because the game is way past that level of gameplay, but it's still like nice to know. And occasionally it does sort of come up in like maybe, you know, super simplified game states with like weaker decks, but essentially a lot of that theory is basically irrelevant to Yu-Gi-Oh! And more so relevant for Time Wizard format, but it's a very good read. Would recommend that you take a look at it if anyone's interested. It's called Who is the Beatdown? I think it's on like Metagame or something like that. I don't know. It's been a while.
We actually have a pretty good parallel of this from the first round of the Worlds stream from a couple of weeks ago. Gabriel Netz here is on Snake Eye while his opponent is on Labyrinth.
This was insane, by the way. His opponent, this was the weirdest things I've seen. Like, this bro is, again, exactly what I told you at the start. Like, Gabe has just, like, full combo, everything on the field, follow-up, 4 cards in hand, and his opponent, is just sitting there, and he's just, like, he's just not scooping. He's just not scooping. And then what happens? Game 3, loses in time. Weird. At the World Championship. Now, admittedly, it's easy to sit there, rub my balls, and be like, huh, this guy sucks, which is not what I'm trying to say. But do bear in mind that the OCG doesn't have the time rules, or at least not in the way we do. I think they still have 1, 2, 3 turns, actually. So it's only a very, very recent thing for the OCG to adapt to the time rules. There's actually a really good thread on Twitter by Gimlet, funnily enough. I think he's like he's a Korean Master Duel player. And he went into the details about how, like, why is OCG basically #fallen off. And one of the reasons he brings up is, like, OCG is not, like, competitive with time rules. Like, they don't have the way that we play. Like, we have gotten very used to the time rules, and we have gotten very adept with playing with them. But OCG haven't, which is why a lot of their players just didn't do as well as they could have at Worlds. Maybe it's a cultural thing, like, you know, you play your last card, you never surrender, you always try your hardest until the last moment. Whereas in TCG, I mean, you have to be, in general, you have to be more lax and lenient with when you scoop a duel.
So it's pretty clear that Gabriel Netz is favored in time. Snake Eyes wins a lot faster than Labyrinth does, and most importantly, has Lacrima in Worlds format. That means in pretty much any position where Gabriel is allowed to take a singular...
I'm not being racist, dude, but you need to play around with your lighting, Joseph. Like, your skin tone is, like, burning my eyes. Like, just the reflection of this man's face is hurting me.
singular turn in game 3, he's going to be able to burn his opponent out with anywhere from 1 to 5 or 6 minutes on the clock playing at speed.
It's
and
Dyer's
for Gabriel
post-editing.
Nets, he wins game 1. Both of them shuffle up and go to game 2, and his opponent, on Labyrinth, gets out to a really early lead in the second game of the match. It becomes clear quickly that this Labyrinth player has got this one in the bag. Nets' hand is kind of crappy. He's got like oaks in there or something. And for all intents and purposes, the Labyrinth player has the entire thing locked up. But, Gabriel Nets doesn't scoop. I mean, why would he? Yes, it's unlikely that any of his individual cards are going to make a difference, but they are all must negates. You know, if your opponent lets an ash and an oak through, you do still win. So instead, he plays it out, slams his cards down on the table, playing at speed the entire time and asking the opponent to interact with them or lose. Of course, the opponent has all the tools in the world. He can interact with everything even suboptimally and still walk away with it. But the back and forth that comes from negotiating a control deck does eat up time, and Labyrinth doesn't win the game in one battle phase. There's like a first turn setup and then a third turn where you get way ahead and do something like 5,500 damage, and then a subsequent fifth turn where you have to get in for lethal. This takes forever.
And that's assuming your opponent doesn't have any more floaters and chump blockers and ways to delay the game even further.
As they board into game 3 with just a couple of minutes left, the writing feels already on the wall. Obviously, Gabriel Nets can get into a position where Lacrima wins the game on the spot, but a significant amount of the cards that beat an established Fiendsmith Snake Eye board state are also off the table. Evenly Matched and Dark Ruler no more. These are really good in games you expect to play out. But Gabriel Nets' opponent can't really board into them because it's unlikely they're going to get to turn 5 when they could actually get in. So simply by making the decision to play a game out,
Pretty sure I saw a Cosmic Cyclone at Worlds as well, by the way, which was crazy. Like, 3 minutes left on the clock. Okay, activate Cosmic. Like, huh?
instead of scoop, Gabriel Nets has put himself in a winning position in a match that otherwise could have been left up to chance. And afterwards, he gets his singular turn and lacrimas his opponent out. There were things his opponent could have done as well. If you're in the Labyrinth player seat and understand that you are not favored in time, consider scooping really early. In order to not get myself into a
I think this was a point that he probably should have emphasized a little bit more throughout the video. Like, the video's like got, what, 1 minute, 30 seconds left, and now it's essentially hammering in the point that, you need to scoop faster in game 2. TLDR, if you are going to lose.
a feels bad moment in time. I have scooped games.
Which is like such an annoying paradox in Yu-Gi-Oh, isn't it? Because how many games have you guys watched where someone just looks like they are in such an unlosable position, they just have everything, and somehow, some way, they just like do like a dumb link summon, they just do like a weird like, you know, sequence that just puts them randomly behind, and then you're like, what just happened? And then they lose. It's a weird paradox, because people will just lose games for no reason. Like, the biggest enemy of a Yu-Gi-Oh player is themselves. So yeah, it's something to remember. Noted, going 0-2 instead of 1-1 to play faster. Thank you. Yeah, no, yeah. You specifically don't. You are not going to win any games. Full fall. Okay, so you should just scoop every game. Go to a YCS, pay your entry, get your packs, and then just go 0-2 every round. You get to get pizza faster.
I felt I was winning, with the understanding that actually doing so would take something like 15 extra minutes. Scooping a 60% win in which my opponent has a 40% chance to take it, then a 100% chance of winning in time, is not a position I want to be in. And taking a step back, getting...
It's a stretch to say that you can win 100% in time in game 3, right? If assuming you're the only player, like there's 1 minute left on the clock, you start game 3, you're basically the only person who's playing that duel. But there's a lot of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! That interact in game 3 now, and one of the ones that people complain about is Dogwood. And there is very little ways to interact with Dogwood. Draw, called by, or bust, you know, like that's basically all we have available to us, isn't it?